Perfect.
So, I see nobody online, nobody here to ask any questions about the closed session. So, I want to propose that we adjourn to the, closed session room. And, there is information that I want to bring Bob and Alina up to speed on that Brian's already aware of regarding the GM candidate selection.
Okay.
So with that,
Hey, Brian and CTV, I'll be back at
I'd like to reconvene this meeting of the Board of Directors for the San Lorenzo Valley Water District for May 15th, 2025. Jen, would you take roll, please?
Yes. President Smelling.
Here.
Vice President Wayne. Here. Director Polk.
Here.
Director Largate.
Here.
All right. We have everyone.
Okay. The board took no action on any of the items that were in the closed session. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, there's one change. We're going to pull item 10E, the reserve policy.
Could we leave that on and have a discussion anyway? I mean, I think there might be some value in getting some board input on that. So
It's up to Heather. This is
it doesn't have to have any kind of formal presentation or all that, but I know I have some comments I'd like to offer on that you may want to take back into the budget committee if that's where it's going to go back.
Well, we can leave it on.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Not on the screen.
Okay. Oral communication. Does anybody, member of the public, wish to address the board on items that are not on the agenda this evening, but are within the purview of the district? The standard 3-minute limitation on individuals. Mr. Holloway.
Thanks. I'm Bruce Holloway from Boulder Creek. One of the things that came out at the Finance Committee meeting yesterday is the district has more than $6 million in a Wells Fargo checking account earning 0% interest. $6 million earning 0%. The county investment pool is currently paying about over 4%. So it occurs to me that if the district moves $5 million out of its checking account into the county investment pool, the district will be getting $200,000 a year of interest in the near term. That's about $4,000 a week. $4,000 a week will cover Heather's contract. I believe Heather's contract is $2,400 a week. It will also cover Jen's raise that just happened. Not only the hourly amount, but the CalPERS percentage that's added on top. All of that adds up to less than $4,000 a week. So the sooner that you can transfer the money into an interest-bearing account, the sooner those expenses will be covered. Heather's contract and Jen's raise can be completely covered by the interest if you move $5 million. If you wait till the next board meeting, that's 3 weeks, you're going to lose $12,000. I think it's worth a special board meeting before, probably next week to talk about it. Maybe 5 million is not the right amount. Maybe it could be 1 million more or 1 million less. But I think 5 million is about the right amount. Also, the district doesn't have a treasurer. So the board has the authority to invest surplus funds. The board can make that determination anytime and start earning interest on that money. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow up with you on that later. Yes, if a public comment about things that. Okay.
Russ Chicon, I live in Scotts Valley.
Okay.
I'd like to understand more about the criteria that the board uses in order to annex a property to supply service. Can you give me some insight on that?
So since your question is not on the agenda, we can't discuss it. But I would ask, would you submit an email to staff with just several of your questions, and then if staff can't address it, they could bring it to the board.
Okay, so just if I write the email to staff, that is typically how you would address a question like I just asked?
Since we don't have the answer right now.
Yeah.
If you
Yes.
want to email me.
Right.
We'll give you a response.
To Jen as our acting general manager now. Yes.
Okay, and I presume you're on the website or something on how I would know that, or
Yes, I should be on there.
and your name is Jen?
Jen Torres.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody online with their hand up wishing to speak. So with that, I'd like to transition to new business. First item is the notice of vacancy. And Jen, you're presenting that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so as we know, the board of directors, we had an elective office that became vacant by Jeff Hill, effective on May 12th. So our recommendation, well, we have two options. We can either vote by a 2/3 or a 3/4 majority to schedule applicants and, do the notice of vacancy and go that route, or we can do a standalone or a special election. I did include the numbers here for if we choose to do a special election, which costs about $5 to $6 per voter. We currently have 17,856 registered voters, so that would be anywhere between 89,280 and $107,136. So we are just bringing this to the board to see what you would like to do.
Okay, all right. We'll start with you, Brian.
I recommend that we invite members of the community to apply for this position to make an appointment so that we are fully not staffed, but boarded in the interim.
We have a full complement on the board. Okay, Elena?
I think we should do a board appointment and not waste money
Okay.
on a special election.
Okay, Bob?
I find it interesting when we use the term waste on an election where we allow people, actually the people to whom we're responsible to have a say in who's going to represent them, rather than 4 people on the board. I'm always in favor of elections. I think that is in fact one of the things you do want to spend money on as a priority. But since that's not going to be a majority position here, at the very least, I would like us to have a longer cycle than 2 weeks for someone to apply. Could we not push this to June 12th or 13th to allow people a little bit more time for it to get out, to be known, that sort of thing? I mean, 2 weeks is basically, we already got somebody in mind and we're just going to push it through as quickly as possible. That may not be the case, but that's certainly what it looks like to have something that short.
Okay. I was also concerned, I agree with, we should solicit applications for an appointment to the board. So I am in favor of doing that. June 2nd seems like it is a bit too soon. So Jen, I think you were backing up from that 60-day window.
Right. We did this the last time too. We had
Right,
to do it.
need to do this within 60 days.
Right.
Or is the legal requirement from the county that we notify them within 60 days that we intend to make an appointment?
They
Because-
said within 60 days, we need to notify them of our decision. So we do have more time than June 2nd.
Okay, so.
I did confirm that before.
Right, okay, so that we need to let them know that if we do vote here tonight, yes, to appoint,
Right.
that we are going to move ahead with an appointment, but not necessarily,
Not necessarily fill it by the 60-day mark.
right, within the 60-day mark.
Mhm.
Okay, which given July 4th falls within that, and okay, okay, so I was looking at it and saying have applications due by June 11th. So we were,
June 12th.
what's the
Because, well, the agenda would have to be done by the 13th. The
Yeah,
agenda could be presented and added to later if necessary with who the applications are.
I want to defer to our acting GM.
I'm trying to get as close to at least a month as possible.
I understand.
No, I understand that. It's just, you know, I don't know how many applications we're gonna get and,
Right.
you know, I mean, I could potentially post the agenda on that following Monday if it gets to be where it's a time constraint for.
Right.
Well, you could always post it on Friday without the applications if
Mhm.
necessary, and then add them on Monday.
Mhm.
Right.
I don't think, given the time frame, I don't think we're gonna have that many.
Can we get into an issue that I'm out of the country, but I guess you three.
We can push it to the.
Okay,
Fine,
pushing to the 12th for applications being due.
Okay.
right, the deadline for application.
Right,
Correct.
so that by the following meeting on the 19th,
Mhm.
we're looking at
So June 19th.
June
June
19th.
19th.
Interview and appoint on June 19th
That's fine. Oh,
is reduces the time frame that we're here with four of us covering things on the board.
I will not be here on the board meeting for June 19th.
You can participate from an international location.
I will be in the woods in June. 'Cause it's,
Satellite
it's,
phones.
It's
Again,
Juneteenth.
her manager schedule.
Yeah,
Back off.
I mean, yeah,
Okay,
I mean, I don't
I
have to
get
be
a
here
phone from
either.
Germany.
yes. Okay,
Is Juneteenth is the
It's-
new federal
It's a new
holiday.
federal holiday,
Well-
and so we're gonna be gone, taking that holiday.
So
Okay.
that's a Friday?
It's the Thursday.
Oh, my eyes.
Yeah, so I'm
glasses.
gone like this whole week.
I
It's
see.
The federal
Would
holiday now.
would we meet on
Juneteenth
that
is
date?
Thursday, the 19th.
They don't get it off.
Oh, I see.
We don't.
Gotcha. Thank you.
then I will ask the rest of the board, knowing what we do about one of our board members' schedule, are we three okay with moving ahead then with this June 19th? Or do we push to July 3rd?
I think that more time for more applicants and a more robust and thorough process is better. And I think that having 4 board members participate in the decision process is better. I'm comfortable doing it on the 3rd.
Okay.
I would be very uncomfortable appointing without Elena's presence. I mean,
Okay.
it's fair
Okay.
to have everybody here.
Right.
I will probably be out of town then, but the good news is I'll be within broadband and phone range.
Okay.
What's a quorum at that?
Three.
Three.
3.
You have to have three in the district.
room.
Well, in the district officially, but in the room would be better.
Yes, yes.
So you'll still have a quorum, just as long as no one else is.
Right. I'm a little nervous about that. I have a sister who has a surgery that week, and
So
We're all busy this summer.
June 12th for applications due.
Well, if you're going to make it the 3rd, then I would push it out another week. As Brian said, I think more time is
Okay.
better.
I think more is better. I think we might need to have a special meeting,
Yeah.
depending on this stuff on the,
Can we appoint at a special meeting?
I don't know.
That's the problem we ran into last time.
Yeah, we did,
Mm.
we did. So
We can't.
applications due by June 19th, review interviews and appoint on July 3rd.
Okay.
Okay,
Sounds good.
then, I'll make a motion that the Board of Directors, by motion, find an elective office became vacant effective May 12th, 2025, and proceed with filing the vacancy in accordance with applicable provisions of the California code. Okay, I'm reading the staff recommendation. The board finds that the seat became vacant effective May 12th, and by vote of 3/4 to fill, directs the acting general manager to proceed with posting a notice of vacancy with June 19th at 5 p.m. as the closing date of receipt for applications. Schedule the applicants for interviews at the July 2nd, or I'm sorry, July 3rd board meeting.
All right. And then-
Second.
That works?
Then we
Okay.
just need to see if there's public comment.
Agreed. Yes. Okay. All right. Any comments from the public on this board vacancy? Filling. I see none online. I see none here.
Okay.
Jim?
All right. President Smalling,
Yes.
Vice President Lang,
Yes,
Director Foltz,
Yes.
Director Logay.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Okay. Next up, we have the public employment vacancy, recruitment and retention public hearing. And Lisa's presenting that one?
I'm going to do the presentation.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Good evening, Board. Heather Ifoletti, Senior Advisor with Regional Government Services, Fiscal Consultant to the district. Tonight's presentation is on AB 2561. This law imposes new obligations on public agencies related to tracking and presenting information on job vacancies. The bill mandated that public agencies present the status of vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts during a public hearing before the agency's governing body at least once per fiscal year. Each year, beginning with this report, the district will schedule and hold a hearing prior to budget adoption to comply with AB 2561. The data that the district will report on to meet the compliance requirements of AB 2561 each year will be based on the previous calendar year with a snapshot of the activity as of December 31 of each year. The data that AB 2561 requires to be reported is on recruitment, vacancy, and retention efforts or activities. The district has two groups of employees, management supervisor confidential, and then classified. And therefore, the data that I'll be reporting is by group. For the management supervisor confidential unit, it has 10 budgeted full-time equivalent positions. During the year, there were 2 hires. As of the end of the year, there were 3 open positions. Total number of applications was 115. Time to hire was 60 days, and the vacancy rate was 30%. For the classified unit, the budgeted full-time equivalent positions was 27, 1 hire. As of year end, it was 2 open positions. The total number of applications was 7. The time to hire was 240 days with a vacancy rate of 3.7. Several potential challenges have been identified for the district. First challenge, it impacts the entire public sector and revolves around the shortage of talent in higher level technical roles. The second challenge, the remoteness of the district poses a potential drawback for talent as they consider employers. And then the third challenge, the district competes directly with other employers in Silicon Valley who offer higher pay for similar roles. Lisa Young, the district's HR specialist, is here to answer any questions about the district's recruitment process. And that concludes staff's report.
Okay. Thank you.
Point of order. So, did we need to open a formal hearing in order to do this? So I don't believe that we actually opened a formal hearing as part of the meeting. And I'm just curious, do we need to do that in order to accept the information, ask for public comment on the information as part of the hearing, close the hearing, and then come back to the rest of the agenda?
Yes,
Oh, okay. So,
this is a public hearing.
Okay, so we actually have to have language to
Yeah.
formally
Do you have
open the
your
hearing.
script?
I have to pull it up. I supposed to read this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it didn't click on me until after you were done, so you get to repeat it all again. Thank you very much. I should have said something earlier because I've been through this before, not on this topic, but on a public hearing.
The requirement is that.
I can,
Let's see if I can.
I don't know what page is this. And if somebody else knows where it is and wants to,
And I think you're supposed to even gavel the public hearing, as I recall, but you know, you can use your phone for that. Yeah, exactly.
I don't need to. I can bang my fist on.
And just from in future, usually the agenda will have in it embedded the information around what the public hearing requirements are. And then you would have around that the agenda item itself. I think at that point, in terms of just trying to do something, why don't you just say something like, I call a public hearing to order on the topic of AB, what is it, 2561?
2561. Right, okay. Then I call a public hearing to order for the San Lorenzo Valley Water District to discuss the impacts of AB 2561 on district staffing.
Wait, announce the date, time, and location.
Oh, okay. On May 15th, 2025, at the district's offices in Boulder Creek. So,
Good evening, board. AB 2561 includes new obligations on public agencies related to tracking and presenting information on job vacancies. The bill mandated that public agencies present the status of vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts during a public hearing before the agency's governing body at least once per fiscal year. Each year, beginning with this report, the district will schedule and hold a hearing prior to the budget adoption to comply with AB 2561. The data that the district will report on to meet the compliance requirements of AB 2561 each year will be based on the previous calendar year with a snapshot of the activity as of December 31 of each year. The data that AB 2561 requires to be reported on is on recruitment, vacancy, and retention efforts or activities. The district has two groups of employees: management, supervisor, confidential, and classified. The data that will be presented will be by unit. For the first unit, management, supervisor, and confidential, there are 10 budgeted full-time equivalent positions, 2 hires during the year, 3 open positions as of year end. There were 115 applications received. It took 60 days to hire with a vacancy rate of 30%. For the classified unit, there are 27 budgeted full-time equivalent positions, 1 hire during the year. As of year end, there were 2 open positions. 7 applications were received. 240 days was the time to hire with a vacancy rate of 3.7%. Several potential challenges have been identified for the district. The first challenge impacts the entire public sector and revolves around the shortage of talent in higher level technical roles. The second challenge is the remoteness of the district that poses a potential drawback for talent as they consider employers. The third challenge is that the district competes directly with other employers in Silicon Valley who often offer higher pay for similar roles. Lisa Young, the district's HR specialist, is here to answer any questions about the district's recruitment process. That concludes staff's report.
okay, thank you. Questions from the board. Alina?
I mean, I guess I could ask that we still have some vacancies and what's happening with those vacancies currently.
As of December 31st, we did fill the vacancy of the Chris's position. So that has been closed out. And we have contracted with RGS to do the recruiting for general manager, fill that position. And we are still needing a director of finance manager. We have contracted services with RGS right now for that. So we do need to hire that. For the classified, we're eliminating 1 positions. It's been vacant for 2 years. Other staff have filled it. There's no need for that role. So we actually eliminated out of the budget for fiscal years 25, 26, 26, 27. That is no longer going to be on it. It is open because it was budgeted for this fiscal year.
I'm sorry, which position was that?
Field services coordinator.
Thank you.
I can remember the field system services coordinator. And then we have by promoting Chris, we opened the vacancy for the environmental planner. We have that posted. We posted it on Wednesday. We already have 3 applicants. So we will be looking at them, posting them, and hopefully having some interviews and hire offers by the end of the month is nice stretch goal.
Is that the only place that it posted is on the district's website
On
or?
the district website, we always post Indeed. Every time we have a vacancy, I send it out to all staff and ask them to hit their networks. I know that it's been out. I've talked to a few of the staff and they have, Chris as well. Weston people have already sent it out to people that they know, people that, networks that they have. So, that tends to get us some qualified applicants because people that work in the district know it, know the job, what it entails, what it's like working here. And I have found, I've only been here for 7 months, but I have found that we do have pretty good response from Indeed. And if we just hired a part-time temporary person for the maternity vacancy, if anything doesn't, we do always look at other job-specific websites, whether it will be depending on what the level of position is. But this particular one, that's what we've taken so far. But if we don't get any good-looking applicants, we'll reach out to schools that offer some of these majors, see what they have career boards, Handshake. It's a lot of schools, and we'll target alumni, and we can specify what degrees we're looking for that might fit this. So that would be our next step if we don't. But so far we have 3 pretty good looking.
Okay.
And so we just posted it.
Especially for like environmental stuff. I always like go to government jobs,
Yeah.
that website, so I don't know like how much it costs to post there or what, but that's
not
a
that
pretty
bad,
solid
we do.
one.
We do post there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for all of that.
Bob?
I have no questions. I wish we didn't have to do this, but it seems like I'm not sure exactly what the value here overall. But you guys did a great job of putting together the report and I do appreciate that. So thank you.
Brian?
So I had a question. So it's my perception that the district's ability to operate at full effectiveness is limited in part by the vacancies. And as Mr. Holloway pointed out, this issue of financial management and the lack of a treasurer is a cause of great concern to me and costs us a lot of money. The finance director position, I guess maybe I could just, if you could share a little bit about the absence of having that position filled and the effect it has on the district. And then I'm also concerned about the grant pipeline, and I'm wondering what positions or lack of positions are correlated to the grant pipeline, the grant writing process, and all of that to keep our work going.
Good questions. For the grant, I don't actually know. I would have to reach out. I know that's part of
Any staff,
Chris.
I'm happy
Yeah.
to, right.
Well, we're hiring their environmental planner 1. We just released that, and I believe that will free up time for me to then be able to devote more of my time to grants, rather like applying for new grants and kind of being on that end rather than filling out, reporting and whatever else on the back end.
Right.
So that's my hope with hiring that position.
Excellent, thank you.
In terms of the finance director or finance manager, I was told when we get the new GM in place they will be the ones to start the hiring for that. To me, it does seem a little bit short-sighted, that we're not, and it's not being currently recruited. We've had a great relationship with RGS, and we've been very fortunate to have them, our contractor, step in and fill that role. Our accountant has been learning a lot as well and stepping up. But I think that is definitely a high priority need, and I think we should get on this as soon as possible. And I don't know, other thoughts on that? I was told that we were gonna wait for the new GM. So
Yes, so, let me reflect on that also, ask a question, follow-up question on that. Brian, are you good with your?
I did have another question, but if we want to stay on the theme of finance director, I'm good with that.
I'm pleased with what we've seen from RGS on the GM recruitment. So I want to ask the board and Heather, since Heather is RGS also, do we want to authorize RGS or get a proposal for RGS to assist us in this effort?
That was actually one of my next questions.
Okay, well then I'm putting it out to the board first.
And I like that idea.
Bob?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that could work. There's a process we're going to go through, obviously, in terms of, so how long do we typically hold open the application process through the various boards that they post on, the warm calling, not cold calling that they say they do, and that sort of thing? Is that like a 30-day period, 45-day period?
it was a 30-day for the GM, and they expected a certain number of applicants, and they got almost exactly what they
Statistically correct number.
absolutely. And
yes, they did.
They do all of the. I was super impressed. First time I've seen recruitment efforts from them. I was super impressed with how thorough they were with the vetting that they did, getting some of the most important questions answered, and really, getting through it and presenting.
And so we hold it open for 30 days. And then there's what, a week or two of then follow-up vetting and that sort of thing. So like a 45-day period before we're ready to do the final interviews of the last candidates that are involved. I am glad they do the full Monty on them. That's very good. I think it's probably good timing for that, Mark, don't you?
And I did want the rest of the board to understand. The district has done what I've now learned is post and pray, post it out on the website and pray that we get something for this finance manager role over the last year and a half. We've not had anybody.
That's not true.
If I may add just a little bit
Sure.
to that post and pray. The district did hire a professional recruiter at one point, and we ended up interviewing 2 candidates, and
Okay.
one was recommended.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, certainly can go back to that. But I mean, I think the process of going through this now seems like the right time.
Okay, I can concur with that. So, Jen?
Do we get a say?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Sorry.
So, I've never been okay with saying that there's some kind of a pause on hiring this. I think that we
Okay.
should have always moved forward, and I don't think that it's ever the board's role to make decisions lower than the general manager. So it's really not our say whether or not we can hire this position.
Okay.
So
Okay.
So whose say is it?
the general managers.
Yeah, right.
And in the absence of a general manager,
yeah,
full-time general manager? I'm sorry.
But we won't go there to debate that part of it.
Yeah.
I will ask Jen on this. Would you solicit RGS? I have had some discussion with Kay Randolph about this already, but I've had my blinders on with GM, for the last month now.
Okay,
So,
no problem.
okay,
I'll reach out to them. Thank you.
okay. So let's see, where did we leave it? Did you still have another?
Right, so I also to staff, as you're aware of now, maybe we're short on operations personnel in the room. So channeling them, some of the positions are operations. Are there other urgent positions that should be filled? And what's staff's opinion of that, to the extent that you can express an opinion?
I know that, construction inspector, whether we contract out or we get a hire for that, that is a need. We have a lot of construction projects and we can talk a little bit more about that. And then there's a new state requirement for cross connection, specialists, that we have been looking at, did drop a job description. We have someone on staff who wants to get certified in that as a potential, but that would be a new position or an add-on to a current position. Haven't flushed that out. That is a need that the district will have, and those are the two that I know of on the top of my head, and there may be others.
The operation, did you say that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Director of Operations.
Yes, I'm sorry,
Oh, yeah, that
I
one.
didn't realize that you joined the room. Thanks.
Director of Operations, having the cross connection specialist is important. Industry standard seems to be the construction inspector would fill that role, so seems like a good time to add it to the job description.
Sure. So in terms of recruiting and replacing those positions, I'm not sure how the process works for staff to fill these roles. But I guess I just want to express encouragement to keep the gears turning and get the team members that you need to get your work done. I really like the idea of having in-house construction inspection, for example, as opposed to having to hire consultants to do that. And I'm sure they can support operations and engineering in all sorts of ways when they're not inspecting. So I just want to cheer staff on in that process.
Okay, all right. Bob, you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, I think let's make sure we're cognizant of the fact that when a new general manager comes on board, they will have their own view about how they might want to organize the district. That is
right.
Part of their
right.
job is to do that, make recommendations to the board on headcount, and that sort of thing. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that while things may go on, they're not necessarily cast in stone if we're doing them without the GM's participation.
Right.
And that's the only thing that everybody just needs to be cognizant of.
And I do have one question on this. I see that the union representatives had the opportunity to make comment on this, in particular for the management, since that's where we've seen the vacancies. Did the management representative have comment on this that you've put together?
Speak up.
Right.
I have not heard.
Right.
I'm sure there are.
Who? Well, I thought it was Joel.
Yeah.
Well, Joel represents the class, right?
Oh, okay.
So who's the manager?
Yes.
What? Well,
So Jen and I represent the management group.
Okay.
Want to speak up?
Yeah.
I don't have a presentation at this time, other than I would like to fill all the open roles. I would look forward to filling the director of finance and the general manager role. My construction inspector would be great to have. I'm using the CAD GIS specialist to perform the construction inspection duties. The assistant engineer has assisted with construction inspection duties for the California 9 Bridges Replacement Project. We've completed the temporary pipeline installation. That's done. We're looking to bid out the Highland tank. So we're going to have a tank project coming up. The bid documents for Echo Tank and for Redwood Park Tank are going to be done in the fall. So then we're going to have 2 more tanks building at the same time. The DWR grant money that's funding our tank replacement has to be spent by December of 2026. So we have to get these projects done as fast as we can. And so I would encourage, that we fill all our open positions.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, I agree. I think they probably should have been filled quite some time ago, especially with the finance director position. Staff really needs a full-time person in a seat in the office to guide and direct staff. And I think that's my number one priority, as well as getting Garrett some help. Just like we did post the environmental planner position for Chris, because he's swamped as well. My goal is just to get staff the support that they need as quickly as possible.
Okay, all right. We don't have a motion to make on this.
Oh, you have.
For public.
So yeah, you have to
That's where I was gonna go now. Yes. So, any comments from the, public on this? I see none in the room.
Mr. Dawson.
I saw, okay.
Mr. Dawson.
Mark Dolson?
Hi, thanks. Just a quick question, because it wasn't clear to me from the discussion. Is the operations director position considered to be filled or interim filled? I just don't know the status of it.
It is currently interim filled.
Yeah,
Right.
we have an acting
Acting.
operations currently,
Does that mean it's being advertised for or not?
not yet. But definitely on the list.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Point of order, you do have to make a motion to close out.
Oh, okay.
That's just what
Thank you.
it says online,
Thank you.
even though it doesn't say it there.
So, I want to make the motion that, the district is, closing the hearing, around, Assembly Bill, 2561 discussion regarding, job vacancies, within the district. Second? Okay, I don't know if we vote on that, but fine,
No.
okay.
I don't think you just needed to make a formal
Yeah, you
motion.
just need to make it formal that it was closed.
Okay, so the hearing is closed. Moving on then to the next item. The acting general manager appointment. I forget, who's presenting this?
I can present it.
Thank you,
Mark.
Barbara. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the agenda item to ratify the appointment of Jennifer Torres as the acting general manager and approve the agreement between San Lorenzo Valley and Jennifer Torres for that position. As you know, we've needed to fill the interim again, and we are continue to look for a permanent, but Jen has stepped up to the plate, and as a result of her working out of class, we put together the accordance to the MOU, a short little agreement to document her increase in pay for working out of class. And as the board members know, you discussed this in closed session and agreed to increase her salary to a total annual salary of $165,000. So that's what's before you on this agenda item.
Okay. Thank you. Comments from the board. Bob?
I think this is good and we should pass it. I do want to say in general, just for everybody at the district, that's been working really hard over the last, almost year and a half now, I guess, where you've had to step into different roles as we've worked hard to try to get a new general manager through this time of turmoil. Thank you for doing that. No, it's not always easy. But it's the kind of thing that when people pull together like that, we can actually make it work well. So look forward to voting on this and having you officially the acting general manager.
Right.
I want to say thank you, Jen, for stepping up into the breach, not only in this current cycle, but at previous times during your time with the district when leadership was needed. We're really, really grateful for your integrity, your hard work, and your dedication, especially considering how you are to the team.
Yeah.
You
That's an understatement.
jumped right on in.
Yeah.
So thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, and we're really happy to have you in this role.
Alina?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Brian said. Just thank you so much for, stepping up these 2 times that we've been without a general manager. And I know the last one was really difficult because you didn't have an official title. And even when Kunkel was here, he was only here 3 days a week, and that you were helping with the day to day, and that you're making sure that staff, is supported and they're getting the help that they need. And this district wouldn't be afloat without you right now. And just thank you very much for all your hard work.
Was that a water-related pun? Thanks, Jen,
Yeah.
for taking the initiative that you've pointed out to me. So, good. Before I make a motion, comments from the public on this? Seeing none in the room, none online. I want to, the motion that the board ratify the appointment of Jennifer Torres as the acting general manager and approve the acting general manager agreement between San Lorenzo Valley Water District and Jennifer Torres.
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay.
Acting general manager, would you take the role on whether to appoint you as the acting general manager?
President Smolley,
Yes.
Vice President Lane,
Yes.
Director Fold.
Conflict of interest. Yes.
Okay. And Director Logan.
Yes.
All right. Motion
Okay.
passes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I do have to point out, when we can see the humor in the serious aspects of most everything else that we have here, we should take that opportunity. So glad that folks could have a bit of a laugh over this one. Okay, moving on then. Caltrans Highway 9 paving, collar replacement. So, Mr. Roth,
Yes. So
have a
the
this
item,
ugly one for us?
the item before the board has to do with a recently completed Caltrans Highway 9 paving project. The district hired Granite Construction to lower and raise our existing water valve boxes to facilitate the paving of Highway 9 for Caltrans project 05-1P7304. The district used our standard detail SD2, which is a 6-inch thick poured concrete collar around the valve boxes. Granite Construction completed the water valve contract work in January of 2025. In April of 2025, the district was contacted by Caltrans indicating damage to 27 of the 36 new concrete collars. Granite Construction was alerted, went out and assessed the newly installed concrete collars and proposed to fill concrete cracks with a low viscosity structural injection epoxy for 6 of the valve collars and to completely replace 21 of the valve collars. Additionally, they indicated that the 6-inch concrete collar design may not be sufficient to support the traffic loads on Highway 9. The majority of the concrete collars on the shoulder or the edge of the traveled way have held up with no issue. However, areas within the traveled way are showing signs of cracking and will likely crack again once replaced. Many cities have a depth of 12-inch for their concrete collars or include rebar in their designs. Caltrans responded to Granite Construction indicating that crack repair method is not acceptable and that any collar with any kind of crack will need to be removed and replaced. District staff coordinated with Granite and Caltrans to repair the damaged concrete collars in accordance with the County of Santa Cruz Standard Detail EP9. The County Standard Detail EP9 includes steel rebar reinforcement. It's 12 inches thick and uses 5,000 PSI concrete. That concludes my presentation.
Okay. I'll start some of the initial questions on this round. And then transition to other board members. So, the cracked, collars, were those, ones that we were reusing from what was out there in the field? Or,
So the concrete collar is a poured piece of concrete around a Christie box.
okay, so around the Christie box.
Correct.
So it was those. Caltrans has a standard? County has a standard?
The district has a standard and the county has a
Your
standard.
county has, so we were using the district standard
Correct,
initially.
correct,
The county has a different standard,
correct.
and
This causes issues on other projects as well,
Yeah.
because you have to specify to the contractor if
Yeah.
they're in the county right of way,
yes,
or if you're on a private.
right. But these collars that were there before, they were the, pre-January. These were 6-inch, 12-inch. What were they before?
So there are some valve boxes that do not have concrete collars, depending on when they're initially installed.
Yeah,
So sometimes the valve box will just be set in the asphalt.
right. But for the ones that are in Highway 9 that are cracked, the ones that we're dealing with there,
Yeah.
did these, what standard were they set to before?
I don't think they were concrete.
I don't have information about the existing condition before the paving project.
Okay,
We were alerted by Caltrans that we had a certain number of utilities
Right.
that was in their way. The Christie box has a steel lid, so they're not able to grind the asphalt with the steel lid in their way. So the Christie
Right.
box had to be removed.
Yeah.
And so if there was a concrete collar there or asphalt around it,
okay,
Granite agreed to try and salvage as many of the G5 Christie boxes
Yes.
to reuse.
Yes.
We ended up providing them, I believe, around 20 of these G5 Christie boxes. New.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And so for these repairs, they'll leave those boxes in place. They'll remove the concrete.
right,
They'll add the rebar, and then they'll pour the fresh concrete
yes.
deeper, 12 inches thick, rather than 6
Rather
inches
than
thick.
6 inch.
And staff would not be opposed to updating the district standard to match the
Yeah, okay.
county standard.
We're looking to you for that recommendation. If that's what our engineering manager says, then
I don't see that the cost savings of having an unreinforced 6-inch thick
it's not worth it.
concrete collar as our standard,
Yes.
when we can just adopt the county
Okay.
standard and simplify construction.
Okay. I have a few other comments or questions that are nitpicking on contract or what the contractor submitted to us for proposal, but I'll come back to that. So, Bob?
Yeah, it's really funny because I was driving on Highway 9 last week and said, boy, these collars don't look very good. Maybe I should contact Garrett.
Yes.
And then I looked at the agenda and went, oh, so there it is. So look, this isn't a question of staff is open. This is something where you guys have to take action. It's clear that for whatever reason, at least on high traffic areas, we need to have a different standard. Maybe we don't need it on, Highland Drive residential, and maybe a FedEx truck or two goes on it, but Highway 9's different. So this is one of those things, Garrett, where, the original I think was about 188, 190,000. So we're now up into the 250. We're looking at a 35% overage here on that particular thing, somewhere around there. This is significant at this point. And I don't, we learn every day. And so this is something we need to learn from. Updating those standards like right now is the thing you got to do, in my opinion. So, but I don't think we have any choice at this point other than to do it, just like we didn't have any choice really with doing the earlier lower and raise. So,
Other board member comments or questions, Brian?
My questions have been addressed largely by the line of questioning that we've heard so far. I guess I would encourage moving forward, not only updating this standard I would just encourage you to apply your expertise in critical thinking to all of our standards as you are, pushing projects forward and looking at them again and see whether they're current and fully informed. It may be that other stuff is, under-resourced or lighter duty than is appropriate. That we avoid these situations going forward.
Alina?
Yeah, so it was just a miscommunication then, I guess, about what standard to use, or did they not do their research, or?
No, we directed them to install it per the district standard.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Yeah, well, I think that makes sense to adopt the county then, so it doesn't happen again. Yeah. That's all.
Then a couple of other specific points that I had. Under the general exclusions in Granite's proposal, they exclude traffic control plans. How can they not have the traffic control plan for the work that they're doing in the middle of Highway 9? So I want to make sure that that's just an oversight on their part.
So Granite Construction is contracted with Caltrans.
Right.
Not only to do our little bit of work,
Right.
but also to do the paving and the striping.
Yes.
And so they don't need to charge us
For
for
a traffic
a
control,
traffic control plan.
but they will do traffic control as needed then.
They will do traffic control, yes, 100%.
Okay.
In
Okay.
accordance with
That was,
Caltrans
uh,
requirements.
That was more the issue. And there was a comment also in there about steel plates will not be used. Well, don't they need steel plates? Or what's the,
So they're using a rapid set 5,000 PSI concrete mix, which will
Okay.
achieve
so
it'll achieve a 3,000 PSI strength within an
in
hour.
30 minutes or an hour?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So then they can keep that blocked off for that period of time and go with it then.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Then public comments on this item.
The part that I got confused about here is if this work was being done on a county thoroughfare like Glen Arbor Road, would the district naturally have used the county standard on Glen Arbor Road?
So anytime we work in the county's right of way, we have to get an encroachment permit. And the encroachment permit includes the county details that you have to follow in a right of way.
So then I guess my next question is there a Caltrans standard? Because on a state thoroughfare, I would think you would naturally be using the state standard, just like if it was a county road, you'd use the county standard.
Caltrans doesn't have a standard for water valve lids, and they deferred to our standard, and they accepted the county standard.
Yes, good.
After the fact. Okay, all right. I don't see anybody online with their hands up. So I'll make the motion that the board directors directs the acting general manager to execute the contract with Granite Construction Company for the replacement of 27 damaged concrete collars at water valve boxes within Highway 9 in accordance with Caltrans project 05-1P7304. That's the motion.
In an amount, not
I'll second.
Oh,
a little
okay.
friendly amendment.
Okay, in an amount not to exceed 77,140.
Yeah, plus.
And authorizes the acting general manager to execute non-substantive modifications as necessary. And the board finds that this contract is subject to the sole source provisions of the district procurement policy as Granite. I'm blanking on the
Granite Construction
company performed the original work. It does not make sense to bid out any new contractors. They would be wholly unfamiliar with the project and likely cause the project expense to significantly increase. Thank you.
Second.
Okay.
Okay. All right,
Right.
go ahead, Jen.
President Smalling,
Yes.
Vice President Lang,
Yes.
Director Polk,
Yes.
Director Largay.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay. Next is the reserve policy, which we agreed to discuss. So,
Bob wanted to make comment.
Comments, but yeah,
comment. Okay.
I mean, anybody else can make comments too, of course.
Right, okay. Well then, given that you have comments, do we need any staff presentation on this? So, okay, go ahead then, Bob.
Yeah, so just some comments about how about what I was looking for in terms of an updated reserve policy, because I'm certainly open to one. And just a little bit of background, the compensated absence reserve was set that way because at the time we did this, the number was so huge. I think it was like almost $750,000. And that there was so many people that could potentially take that quickly that we were still in a fairly low cash environment that we wanted to call that out separately. If we do not have that kind of exposure anymore, then it certainly is worthwhile doing it. But it is one of those things where, at least in the private sector, most companies over the hill now are going to no vacations in order to not have that kind of balance sheet liability building up over time, which at some companies is tens of millions of dollars, and a big number that they have to hold in reserve. In terms of the fire surcharge, restricted balance, debt service, restricted balance, and assessment districts balance, I saw that you wanted to remove those from the reserve policy. I'm concerned about doing that. We are not doing, I don't believe, fund accounting right now to have those reported separately anyway, right? They're all kind of lumped together.
They are not lumped together.
But the visibility issue is what I'm really concerned about. By removing them from the reserve policy, we don't have a clear picture on what our cash exposure is. And in fact, those are all, I know they're all restricted, but they're in there for a reason, which is to make sure we don't lose sight of that. And the fact that the assessment districts reserve, we may have multiple assessment districts coming up shortly, depending on how some of the consolidation activities go. I'm concerned about how we handle that to make sure the board has complete visibility into the cash that's out there and what that cash needs to be used for. Lumping it into some large restricted account doesn't work for me personally. It may work for everybody else, but it doesn't work for me relative to visibility. The fire surcharge restricted balance, that surcharge was passed with the explicit understanding that they would always be accounted for separately. We don't always do that. And when that happens, it tends to skew what money we actually have available, because that money can't just be used for anything. It's got to be used specifically for disaster recovery. So the debt service restricted balance, I'd be okay getting rid of, because that really is just a holding pattern for making our debt payments. And I don't know that it really adds a lot of value to that regard. But unless there's some really clear way that's in policy, not something that could be changed without coming back to the board to change it, I'm really uncomfortable getting rid of the restricted balance information. The other thing I noticed in here is finally, we have what I think is a real number for what the replacement cost is for our system. Garrett, mine was about $425. So good job. That is great. And if you take that number and bring into it the different elements along with their life cycles, you can then calculate how much you need to spend every year in order to stay current with making sure that your capital infrastructure is maintained and not going into arrears. My calculation was about 6 to 7 million a year minimum, not counting what we need to do to catch up. I don't think 3% on the inflation is enough. I think 5% is a minimum, and we could be looking at even as high as 7%.
Yes.
That, well, for whatever number reason, the construction costs around here are skyrocketing. And it's disturbing, but it's the reality we have to deal with. And in terms of the purpose of the reserve, I know there's some places that look at it as terms of the money that you have that you're going to spend in your capital projects every year. And maybe this is a discussion we ought to have. I look at the real reserve, that is the cash that we have to spend on whatever we want, to be the cash that we use to recover from disasters, which we get here about every 5 to 7 years. The biggest disaster, the one that brought us down almost to zero in terms of our cash balance, was the CZU fire. We had about $4.5 million in free cash that we could spend on that. And we spent about 4 million of that. I mean, I was really concerned that if we had another big follow-on disaster, mudslide or something like that, that would push us into a really bad situation. Fortunately, that didn't happen. So I'm not necessarily saying we have to keep a capital reserve at 2.5%, but if 4 million got us through CZU fire by the skin of our teeth, given how costs have risen, 7-8 million feels like at least the minimum here in order to have that available at all times, so that if a disaster does happen, we're able to respond quickly. Because that was one of the things we were able to do, which is respond very fast. The staff, Rick Rogers, the general manager at the time, did a really good job in responding to that. So, and then the operating balance, I'm not sure 7.5 or 7.2 months is needed. Certainly, I'm more conservative than anybody. I wanted to start at 6 months back in 2019, but we couldn't afford it. So we did 3 months, and then we increased it later to 4.5. I'm fine making it bigger. I don't know that 7.2 is necessarily the right number. And in terms of history, thank you for looking into that. That's great. A cash balance of 1.68 million in 2016 was borderline reckless on the part of that board at that time. If we had had a fire then, we would have been technically bankrupt at that point, or in a receivership type position. I never want to get into that kind of situation ever again. And when we came on board in 2018, we made it a big effort to start building up that cash balance as quickly as we could. I think that's all my comments for now. I'm certainly looking forward to what you come back with based on the comments. Thanks.
Okay. I want to ask the other board members, any comments on this reserve policy that you want to share now?
We've discussed it at length at the Finance Committee.
Okay.
We were very pleased with the analysis and asked for further investigation of the scenario of a fire with a bad winter mudslide, and what would be the financial nut associated with that disaster. And I believe that's why the item was pulled from the agenda. And we look forward to hearing what that analysis looks like, because that too, from the Finance Committee's perspective, was the principal purpose for the reserve, at least the capital related reserve. And we're very pleased with the analysis that we've seen so far, and look forward to the next chapter.
All right. Alina?
I'll hold comments till it comes back next time and
Okay.
it's all set. So
Okay.
thank you for your work on this.
I did have a couple of comments, some of it echoing what we've already heard. When we increased the capital infrastructure budget from 150 to 453,000, or a million. If we keep that the reserve rate at the 2.5%, it seems like that's too conservative to me. That would then set the reserve amount for that at over 11 million. If we set it at 1.5, it sets it at about 7 million. That feels to me like a better, percentage number to be looking at, but a better overall reserve number. And likewise on the inflation factor. For some separate work that I was doing on cost estimates for that we're looking at for the consolidations. I found data from a Bay Area source, construction projects within the Bay Area related to infrastructure type. And this is for 2024. They were looking at this. It was 5.1%. So 3, no, that's not. 3 is general or close to general CPI. That's not appropriate for infrastructure related work of the type that we're doing, with the shortages in contractors, with the increases in materials that are above the CPI. So those are the comments that I wanted to offer on it also. Okay. And if you need that backup of that 5 point, I have that and could share that at some point later. Okay. We don't have any motion to make on this item, but we are going to take public comments. Any comments from the public on this?
I went to the last 2 finance committee meetings, and on the April 23rd meeting, when we were talking about the 150 million, I kind of looked at the map and I said, I'm thinking 190 miles at $1 million a mile. That's more than 50 million. And I kind of got shut down. That was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I got told I'm not an expert, and my opinion meant nothing. So I appreciate that Heather asked Garrett for an estimate. I think that's really a step forward. So I did have some questions about Garrett's estimate. So my estimate was $1 million a mile, and the estimate Garrett came up with was more like $2 million a mile, I think. I think that's the way I read it. And I'm wondering, is it still $2 million, even if you're putting a 6-inch main on 2-bar road, as opposed to a 12-inch main on the middle of a state highway, which is really expensive, I think, to do the work there? Just give me ballpark figures. Are you saying that it's always 2 million a mile, or are you saying that maybe it's $1 million on 2-bar and 2.5 million on Highway 9 or something? That's what one thing I did.
Yeah, so we provided the replacement cost for the district's pipelines. And this is based on the diameter of the pipe and the total amount of feet. I would note that we did not include pricing of all the tanks, of the pumps, of the valves and different other infrastructure that we have, the treatment plants. So it was just the pipeline.
Yeah, well, I mean, that sounds like it's more like $600 million or more. Even 450 isn't even scratching the surface. When I look around the room, I see electronics doesn't usually last more than 5 years. Vehicles don't usually last more than 10 years. So a lot of things need to be replaced before you get into replacing tanks and pipes, which last more than 40 years. So this is a good starting point, but it's not the whole thing. And that scares me. The main thing about the reserve fund policy that I see is that this component of 2.5% of replacement cost, to me, that should be the capital replacement plan. That should be the program, 2.5% per year, every year, spending that much. So to put this in the reserve fund policy and say you have to always have 2.5% before you do anything this year, to me, that's like saying you can't have a piece of cake. You have to always have a whole piece of cake before you ever eat a slice. You got to get a second cake. And the way things are going in the finance committee, they're talking about borrowing the second cake even if the first cake is $13 million. They want to borrow a second cake because they don't want to cut into the first cake. So that I see is very dangerous. We need to get going on these capital projects. And if that's a component of the reserve fund policy, it's keeping us, it's saying we've got to keep a year's worth of cash and never spend it. It's really like not being able to cut into your cake unless you've got two cakes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the cake analogy. Other members of the public? I don't see anybody online. Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, thanks for clarifying that was pipelines only, because the
Yeah,
425 I came up with, and admittedly, this was like 2021 type numbers, so they're probably 50% out of date. But it was 425, including treatment plants, tanks, pipelines, wells, et cetera. So I think Mr. Holloway is absolutely correct. If you're looking at just 450 for the pipelines, we're looking at easily 600 to 650 for everything that we have in our system. Think about that, folks. An 8,000 service connection district with a replacement cost of 650 million. Divide 650 million by 8,000. What kind of number do you come up with that each person in our district over a period of time is going to have like 100 years? Obviously not the same person, but that's what they're going to have to pay. That is a staggering figure, and why I'm always harping on how we manage our money, because if we aren't managing, putting as much as possible to that now 600 million, we're going to wind up so short it's not going to be funny. And believe me, guys, no one's coming to bail us out. Those days are over.
Okay. We're concluded on the reserve policy agenda item. Unless there's further. Okay. Moving on then to the proposed budget and the capital improvement program.
You doing that presentation? I'm going to share my screen. Good evening, Board of Directors. Again, Heather Icoletti, Senior Advisor with Regional Government Services, Fiscal Consultant to the district. Tonight's presentation is a continuation of the last board meeting's presentation on the proposed budget. Tonight, I'm going to be touching on a couple of changes that we made to the operations budget, as well as giving the opportunity for a deep dive into the capital projects. Look around, and we have a team here to answer your questions regarding the capital improvement program. So I'm going to get started on a couple highlights for a couple of highlights in revenue, just to remind you of a couple of things that were done that were a little different than the current year and last year in the revenue area, and then again the changes in the operations since the last presentation. So the reminder I want to give you and the public is that at the request of the Budget and Finance Committee, an increase in the funding for the low income discount program was added to the proposed budget, specifically a $5 per month annual increase in the benefit, plus increased funding for 30 additional participants, for an increase of cost of $15,800 in the first year and $24,560 in the second year. That is over the current year's budget of $28,000. That is the revenue that I just wanted to remind you of. Also, the water is a 7% annual increase. The sewer is a 4% annual increase. Property tax, based on a 5-year review, was a 5% annual increase. And with water and sewer, no change to the customer base. Those are just the assumptions that were made. Operating expense, a couple of changes have been made since the last time we presented this. at the board meeting, there were some concerns about increases from year to year in the operations budget. And at first, I sent an email to staff. I said, I need you guys to really look at your budget, see what you can cut. And then I did further analysis. Well, a lot of those increases are not items that staff really has control over. The large increase is in salaries and benefits. Well, right now we have empty positions, which makes it to where, you know, the current year's estimate to close is lower, and there's going to be a big bump next year in salaries and wages because of filling those vacant positions, which we talked about earlier, are needed. Contract and professional services. It's going down in the first year of the budget because there's a number of things that aren't in there that are in there now because of those vacant positions. So we're seeing a decline in contract professional services in the first year. We're seeing a bump in the second year. That is because there are a couple of mandated studies that need to be done. There is a triannual lab audit that needs to be done, a triannual lead and copper study that needs to be done. In the operations area, that second year includes an EIR filing fee. Those are what you're seeing there for those bumps. And then if interest, it's going up 38 and 48%. That's not anything staff can control. Those are amortization schedules of paying off the district's debt. The San Margarita Groundwater Association, those numbers came directly from the association. Those are not estimates. That first year is directly from them. Again, not things that staffs control. So when I asked staff to look at it, we did come up with a couple of minor things. For instance, in the MOU, there's an annual COLA increase that is given. In my calculations, I had that COLA increase starting in July. Turns out it doesn't start till January. So I was able to make that change and produce a little bit of savings. Jesse's department, which is going to be at a loss for me, right? Water supply and treatment. He looked at his contract services, realized that the estimate to close for the current year was high, and therefore his increase for the 2 years of the budget were too high too. I made those adjustments as well. And just in the conversation we had earlier regarding the vacant positions, we have a field services coordinator. That position right now is in the budget at the board's direction. I can't eliminate it from this budget. It is included in these numbers right now. So if I get that direction from the board, I can go ahead and eliminate that position. Let's see. That is what I have for the changes in the operating expenditures. Okay. All right. Capital improvement program. In my summary numbers that I included in the staff memo, as well as the summary numbers I'm going to present here, it assumes 0 debt financing. In my capital program funding spreadsheet, I do have it where I have laid out some projects that could be debt financed. So at this point, I'm looking to get staff, get the board's direction on whether you want me to include proposed debt financing into the budget. I'm not sure how we're going to do the projects without debt financing, without significantly reducing the number of projects or significantly reducing our reserve. And I'm not even sure we can do it with significantly reducing the reserve. So you're going to see a column here that says debt proceeds. And that is what, in the end, I am my recommendation to this board so that they can complete their projects that truly need to be done. And with that said, the Budget and Finance Committee had concerns that the CIP that was presented was unrealistic. So I went back to this group that is here and I said, is this project list realistic? They said yes. They did end up moving two projects outside of the biennium to 27, 28. But what is remaining here, what is being presented for our fiscal years 25, 26, and 26, 27, in their opinion, is realistic. And they are here to defend that opinion. So the funding on the screen right now, grant program funding, it's a combination of grants, debt proceeds, fire surcharge, and reserves or unrestricted funds, is the total funding. The list here that was also provided in your staff memo and the spreadsheet emailed to the board is the projects listed here, but with their funding sources listed. This list is 25, 26. The next slide is 26, 27. The next discussion I'd like is not necessarily me to present to you every information about these projects, but I'd like the board to look at this list and get your questions answered of this list from the staff that are here. So I can finish my presentation and we can come back to this, or we can kind of do it as I go. What is your preference?
I think the bulk of the questions are going to be on this list, the capital improvements program. I do have a few, personally, a few questions on what you've already presented.
Yep.
So I think it's appropriate for the board now to ask some questions about this CIP list.
Perfect. I think that's an excellent.
So I'd like to, yes, take that and transition to this now, in including what you've presented so far.
Yeah.
Because I do have at least one question about that. So with that, I want to open it up to questions, comments for where we are now from the board. Brian, you're part of the Budget and Finance Committee, so I want to lead with you on that.
Sure, thank you. I guess I will say I appreciate greatly the work done by you and staff to right size the capital improvement program, verifying that what is scheduled is achievable on that schedule. The great concern of the Finance and Budget Committee was that there may be borrowing that where we took out a big loan and then couldn't execute on that and ended up paying a lot of interest rates. What appears, I think, is more of a phased approach with perhaps lower total borrowing in the first year and maybe 2 tranches of borrowing or something like that that keeps us from paying interest rates, interest on that loan for as long. And I greatly appreciate that. I will make the observation that if we actually have $600 million in fixed assets that are aging, and if we think that they require a replacement rate of 2.5%, that implies a $15 million a year capital improvement project pace of reinvestment in our aging infrastructure. And to that, I'm heartened to see approximately that figure in the 2-year budget. I'm concerned in the 2 outer years that it drops back down to $8 or $9 million a year of investment. And I think we might be falling behind, but I won't worry too much about that because we're getting back on the horse. Pertaining to this specific list, my perspective on this, I guess I'm depressed that so much goes into the Lion Tank slide because that seems like such a big cost that doesn't get us better water or anything. Apart from that, I'm entirely deferential to staff expertise on what we should be doing and the phasing of it, because I think they are in the singular position to know how best to steward the resources that we've got and get these projects done. So that's all I have to say.
I would say, staff is currently working with the engineering committee on the Lion Slide project. It's gonna be a topic at our May 21st meeting. We're gonna have the geotechnical engineer at the meeting, either virtually, so that he can talk about the landslide, the risk, and more economical solutions on possibly a temporary repair.
Well, that's very heartening to me. And maybe if I could just continue that line of reasoning, I would urge that if we do find a more cost-effective solution to the Lion Slide situation, that the funding budgeted for that be reprogrammed into other capital improvement projects and not left uninvested, because I think that we should just work our way down the list. Thank you.
Okay, Alina?
Well, kind of seeing on the Lion slide, you're kind of getting some new information here, because it was saying it wasn't going to be completed until 2028. And so I was a little bit worried about including the revenue on that mobile lease fee of the 17K, because that might not really be feasible until we get that slide dealt with. And so if that's holding until 2028, then that probably shouldn't be included, but I don't know if there's new information that's going to come out at that meeting. So I don't know, just comment in there.
It's one of the top 5 projects that staff has put as our priority. And staff is hoping that the engineering committee will make a recommendation to the board regarding the proposed new access road and stopping work on that, because that is what is currently budgeted for.
Okay, maybe it'll happen a little bit faster, but we see it, but yeah, we still probably won't be seeing that 17K for a little while. So just keeping that in mind. And then as far as when we're talking about the salaries that are in here, is that taking into account anywhere where we think we're going to land with labor negotiations, or is that strictly where we're sitting at right now?
That's where we're sitting at right now. There
Okay.
are no labor negotiations included in here. It assumes a 5% COLA in the first year and a 3% in the second year. And hold on, I actually have that information.
I believe that's
Five and
correct.
3.
Yeah.
Okay.
In it as of January 1 of 26 and January 1 of 27. I have not been given any numbers that the board is talking about for negotiations at this point.
I just kind of want to know where those numbers are coming from. Okay, thanks. And then the only other thing I had on that capital improvement project list is just seeing that Felton Heights tank is in the 27-28 year, and that there's any way we could bump that up with finding some funding for that. I know we have a lot of people that have come here and presented their feelings about that, and they've been waiting a really long time, and making them wait another 3 years is quite a bit. So that's all the comments I had.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Bob?
Yeah, echo on Felton Heights. I mean, look, guys, I think we're getting close to 15 years now, something like that. And if they've been waiting, I would be more than happy to take one of the other tanks and shift some priorities around. So, and on the Lion slide, I will have some comments at the engineering committee meeting in terms of doing something. I don't want to go into a lot of detail here, but it definitely is. Yeah, it definitely is here. I do want to say, though, that I'm a little concerned about engineering committee's involvement in the CIP. It's almost like we've not really had significant input into the process. I'm deeply concerned about that. And it's one of the reasons why I think we need a policy in place to talk about how we do CIP planning. That may be redundant, but I mean capital improvement program planning. Because what we're doing right now isn't working for me. Maybe working for everybody else, but it's not really, I think, a good quantitative way of approaching it and making sure that all parties are having input into this at the proper time. I recognize we're, a month and a half away from having to pass a budget, so time is short right now, but this process didn't work for me this year at all. Having said that, the structure that you're putting together here with the spreadsheets is fabulous. In fact, you should recognize some of this based on a document that I've been working on drafting, where we start breaking down where the funds are coming from. The only refinement of that might be differentiating between design and construction, because I think when we do these projects, we tend to conflate those two things, and those two things happen at very different paces, very different cycles, particularly the complex project. But I'm not sure exactly yet how we want to handle it, but this gives me some ideas to think about how to structure that. The other thing I'd like to mention is, excuse me, I think we're being a little bit vague about the use of the term reserves. I don't like the use of the term reserves because we conflate reserves that we want to hold in reserve with reserves that we use for projects. I think we need two different words, like restricted cash for disaster or something, and actual reserves or unrestricted cash we use for this kind of thing. Otherwise, I'm not exactly sure where that money is coming from, given how we report it in our financial reports. I also want to say that if I just sent you guys a spreadsheet that I'd sent to Kendra and Rick a couple of years ago. It has the breakdown by asset type. And at the time, my estimation was some thumbs up from Rick as to what things cost. Those numbers could be updated. The formula is already in place for calculating based on the life cycle. I don't think we go to 15 million with a $600 million replacement value, but we probably go to 8 up from 6. This is where the board's really going to have to start getting real. And up until now, the board, in my opinion, we've not been real. The rate study that we put together showed about 50% of the rate increase going towards capital and 50% to operating expenses. Based on your budget and what I'm expecting to happen with the staff negotiations, you're going to be somewhere around 80% going to operating and 20% to capital. Until we get our operating and non-operating margins up to support the kind of numbers that you have here, we're wasting our time. Keep in mind that each $15 million we borrow is approximately 1 million in debt and interest payments a year. What we need to get to in order to have a robust capital funding program is phasing in 6 to 8 $15 million loans or equivalent, depending on how we structure it, so that at all times we have about $80 million of capital that we have invested in loans to support our capital infrastructure. It's either that or you're going to take it out of cash, which I don't advise doing. I think we can borrow money instead of using our own cash and use the cash to repay the loans. We're nowhere near that. Our current operating and non-operating margins run about 4 million, of which our current debt service is approximately 2, more or less. We can't support a whole lot more. So either we're going to look at 4 ways of dealing with that. We reduce the rate of growth in operating expenses, which I'm hearing can't be done. We sell more water, which no one wants to do because we conserve. We depend on the kindness of strangers to bail us out. That ain't happening for at least 4 years. And the last one is we get real about what the rate increases have to be. If we're going to take a rate increase that we just had and dedicate 80% of that to operating expenses, and we're going to keep that same curve of 7 to 8% of operating expense increases, you're going to have to raise the rates even more to get to the 6 million or 7 million in operating margin you need every year to support debt service, to support a $600 million capital replacement program, not obviously right away, but over time. That rate study was such a disservice to the community because it did not address those specific things, even though I tried to get them to do so. Guys, there's no way out of it. No one's coming to bail us out. We either get real about what the numbers are and what rates the community has to pay, or we find some way of becoming more productive, reducing the rate of growth in operating expenses, selling more water, or, you know, trying to get as many grants as possible, as quickly as possible to cover things. Because right now, this plan is unrealistic. It can't be executed on with the money that we have and the money that we're not going to have once we finish all of the reconciliation after negotiations and passing the budget and all that. I know you guys don't like hearing it. I've said it before. I'll say it again as long as I'm sitting at this table, because this is the reality. And until we deal with reality, we can't effectively do our job on a CIP. I will probably be voting against this budget just because of all of the things around this that were not being real. And I think we're going to set expectations for the community that simply can't be met based on the money that we have available, no matter how much we borrow. Thanks for listening.
Okay. To Bob's point of the four options that we have, I don't see a way around us looking at some other changes in the rate structure, given where we are. But for the purposes of this budget, we can't do that right now.
No, you got a month and a half, not happen.
Right, but I think we do need to begin to look at that, given everything else that I see now in a more realistic fashion, given what we're seeing in front of us as far as budget. Grants aren't going to get us there.
No,
it's not gonna. That's not going to happen. And I believe what you have done in order on the operations side, the admin side, to look at what has staff requested in those budgets that could be trimmed back, that you've done that. And until we have anybody else here in the form of a different GM who might have a different perspective on some of this, we're not going to change that. So with that though, you're recommending to us that we go out and look at other debt, a loan package, but we haven't done anything on that yet. And how do we begin to pick up that ball and move that along?
I had the same last year, I think it was. I brought a team together, a very experienced debt financing team. They have provided me estimates just based on, you know, a 19 million on what that debt service could look like. But they are also, they realize that if in that 5-year picture,
right,
I'm assuming that we're getting FEMA money. We don't know if we're getting.
I forgot it. Right.
Okay.
Everybody in this room has been, or I believe, saying, "Oh, FEMA would be great, but
yeah, if we get it,
but we can't
get it.
talk
But
to them
right now, we
it's the
can't rely on it." So they're assuming we're not getting FEMA.
Okay.
Okay. So what they're doing is they are looking at our numbers, trying to structure so that we can do one bond, spend it, and then possibly do another debt and still be able to afford it in there. So what I'd like to do is I would like to bring that team back to you at a future board meeting and let them talk to you about what they're looking at, and then also let them hear what your thoughts are, okay? Because they did a whole lot of work last time and we didn't move forward for many reasons.
Yes.
And what I'd like to do is before they do too much more, I'd like them to hear from this board
Okay.
their thoughts before they bring you a whole package again. Okay? And so that is what my recommendation would be, is to bring in that team, have them talk to the board, get your thoughts,
Right.
and then them come back again after
Right.
they hear what they have with what their recommendation would be.
Okay. I don't want to put the budget in the way of
Right.
that additional debt financing, but I do want to get that.
Movie.
Well, that's my
Yeah.
opinion on that as a board member. I can't give you that direction. I don't know if, unless I see other board members saying, yes, we need to.
I don't know how you do a 5-year CIP if you're not doing a 5-year operating budget, because the margins out of the operating budget directly go into what the money is that you can borrow.
Yes.
And what level of debt you can support, what your debt covenants are
that's what
gonna
I
be
wanna
and all
know
that.
also is what level of debt
But
can our
we,
rate structure support?
we have not done a 5-year budget at this point. We're stuck on 2. So I mean,
Yeah.
this is why this whole thing it makes no sense. You can't, look, I understand that disasters happen and plans change and that sort of thing. But the notion of having a disconnected capital budget and operating budget doesn't make any sense at all to me. I've never seen that in my entire career.
I don't have the answer. I don't know on that yet either. But are you opposed to having whoever Heather's recommending?
No, I mean, look, borrowing some money in the future is essential. No question. I talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
But we have to do that. It's the best way to go about doing what we're doing, particularly given that we have a bunch of catch-up work and disaster recovery work to do. So we're not in a steady state mode by any means. But I'm reluctant to go too far with that process unless we're serious about really digging into these numbers and understanding where it is we're going to be going with it. Including if the board has no appetite for reducing a rate of operating expense increase at multiples of inflation. If there's no appetite for that, then you are forced into raising rates again.
Yeah.
The board will have no choice.
Yeah.
If you're serious about it.
Right.
So I think it's worthwhile, but I am sensitive to, if we're going to do this, they need to understand that don't spend a lot of time on it until the entire board comes back with direction saying, yes, we want to move forward for sure and borrow something, whether it's a 2 tranche or 3 tranche or whatever.
Right. But I think, or I would like to hear their initial proposals on this to begin to let the board ask questions about this.
I think the number one concern that I have is historically, we have not been able to spend the money we borrowed in an expeditious fashion, 3 years, 2 years, what have you, to make it so that we're not paying interest on a large number that we're actually just sitting there. Now, some of that gets offset by investments. I understand that. But I want to understand what kind of flexibility we'd have with a loan or COP or what have you, that we can take things down in tranches without having lots of penalties.
That would be a discussion for them. And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I would bring them
Because
in.
in the past,
Yes,
we,
Sounds like a good plan to bring them in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
I like it.
okay. And I think we already heard that from Brian with Budget and Finance. Okay. The district in the past has been overly optimistic on what we could get done on a yearly basis. And things would always get, well, push that money out, push that money out, push that money out. And then we get dinged on that 3-year cycle of, oh, we've been holding that money too long. Yeah. So need to then have you reflect realities of, what have we completed in the last, years, but not tonight, not here, but as part of this process, I want to see what did we spend, capital improvements over, this time period,
I hear you, but
right?
I want to say, I want to say that the engineering team was almost put on hold. Well, they were pretty much put on hold this fiscal year
Mhm.
because of the concern after I did a working capital calculation.
Right.
And then the reserve,
Yes,
there wasn't anything left over.
I
So
concur.
I would
Yes.
like to, I am happy to tell you what capital work was done, but I want this year to have a giant asterisk next to it because the team was put on hold.
Fair, yes.
So
Yeah.
I would like to put that clarifier into
Right,
that conversation.
but I think we can be looking at past years.
Past history, I can
Right.
definitely do that.
But then the staff that we have right now wasn't here for past.
Right,
so-
there's a lot of variables.
Yes. So, okay, all right. Other comment that I have, what Alina said on that, the lease payments that we're expecting from,
Yeah. The new tower.
yeah, with, input that we gave Garrett, recently, we need to hold off on letting them in onto, so for now, at least until we can,
Remove it.
yeah,
Okay.
remove that. And, yeah, I think that's the bigger comments that I have at this point, so. Okay. And if we are structuring this budget going forward, based on debt financing, that we don't have yet, then staff needs to, recognize, well, don't bring anything in front of us until we get, the debt financing in place. So-
May I ask the board clarification?
Sure.
Okay. My plan is to get enough direction from this board.
Right.
To possibly bring the next meeting a budget adoption to
Mhm.
you. Okay. And what I'm proposing to do based on this conversation, and believe me putting in the budget doesn't mean you're gonna say yes. Okay, so I want to put that clarifier out there. I'm proposing to go ahead and put in to the budget, the debt financing into the budget. And I'm proposing to, I mentioned the field service coordinator that our HR specialist
that's
says
right.
was eliminated. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that. I'm also gonna remove the cell tower rent dollars.
Right.
Based on this conversation.
Right.
And then, what I will do is I will contact, the debt financing team. And find out their availability for the next meeting or the second meeting in June.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I see some board hands up here. Alina,
I don't know if we can move this fast enough, but is it possible that maybe I can work fast enough? It's all by myself. We do have some meetings planned up for labor negotiations that maybe we could possibly vote on labor negotiations on the 5th, so we have actual real numbers to put on the budget that we could then vote on the 19th. Or do you think we're not going to be able to move that fast? It would just be nice to like have real numbers in that budget.
real?
A budget amendment can always be done in
Okay.
July.
Okay.
A budget always kind of expires the instant that it's adopted. Because things are always changing. So,
Okay.
I would recommend a budget amendment once
Okay.
that is completed,
Okay.
instead of trying to speed something like that so important up.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation at least.
Sounds good.
All right, Bob?
Yeah, that's prudent, I think, to do it that way. Yeah, I think it would be instructive for the board to understand what the rates would have to be to actually achieve and pro forma, not that this is
Right.
set in stone,
Right.
but I think an analysis, which I don't think would take very long to do for, what's their name? Tell us. To take the updated numbers and say, because I think their plan had the margins growing to 6 million over a 2 or 3 year period, as I recall. So at least people recognize that was kind of a minimum number. I think you now need to take that to 8. Let's be conservative. And let's see what those rates need to be. My guess is 30 to 40% higher than what they are now, but that's just my guess.
I think that would be informative.
I think
Yes.
you need to do that now. And if they need a couple $1,000s or whatever to do it, that's certainly within the general
The
manager's.
district will have to execute a contract
Yeah.
with Brett Hellis to do that.
Yeah, unless there's somebody that can do it without that.
I don't recommend that.
Okay,
I
so.
don't think so.
Consistency is good.
So have that, because I think it'd be really instructive for everybody in the community to understand what reality is.
And not to the level of detail that they went to before.
No,
But
pro forma stuff.
to,
Right.
exactly, to where Bob is saying, I use back of the envelope or a little bit more than that. Give us a sense of this, not the down to the 0.57% on that. Okay. All right.
Was there any other changes that this board would like to see to this budget? That would enable them to adopt at the next meeting?
I don't
think we're gonna have a choice one way or the other, guys. We gotta have one done, so.
yes.
I appreciate that.
Okay. All right.
And again, why the team is here, you have any questions regarding your the CIPs that are listed here? You've got a very experienced team around you that I dragged this meeting to make sure that they're.
Well,
Sitting here
I
patiently.
probably would have said you didn't have to drag them to the meeting, but we do appreciate your smiling faces here. And of course, Garrett's always more than welcome.
I'm unable to answer CIP questions, so I wanted to make sure you had the team available.
But I have to say, I mean, don't take this the wrong way, but I have to say that the place for those kind of discussions are probably not at the board meeting. The detailed discussions are intended to happen at a committee meeting level. And we just we're not able to do that this year. So that's on us. If board members have questions, they certainly should ask them now. But it's really hard to go through 78 projects. I would feel like I'm not being a particularly good steward of your time if I were to go through and say, okay, explain each one of these two.
But I think it is important for the staff, in particular, Jesse, who hasn't attended other than the last board meeting, for them to see what the board is doing related to this and the questions that we're having about this, because we're struggling with this also, and what to do for the staff, for the community, for the district in general. So that
I don't know, Mark, there's two things you don't want to watch getting made, right?
unfortunately, having them see this budget getting made, or the sausage in this case, is important.
Yeah.
It's not pretty. It's not meant to be. So, with that, then, we stopped you at this point. I don't know that there's.
I'm sure after that, I'm gonna
Oh, that's the
stop my
summary.
presentation when I'm good.
Okay, so you got to the point of yes on the sale.
I did.
Okay.
You're supposed to leave now.
I'm about to run out the
All
door.
right, exactly. And that's
Got the sale, leave.
right. Okay. But I do have to ask, we're not making any motion on this, but it's on the agenda. Does the public have any?
Maybe just before we go to the public, I just want to reiterate the enthusiasm for further discussion, deep dives, understanding the 5-year picture in a comprehensive way. I think that is really important, and I hope we can invest time and resources into that. And then as we get our new finance director on, they will be able to carry that body of work forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, thank you, Heather. That's a lot of work.
Thank you.
So, does anybody from the public want to comment on this item?
Thanks. when I look at that page, for fiscal year 26, the capital projects, it's only 45 days away. When I look at it, see, the weather's been really nice, and we're in the height of the construction season, and I think it's all gonna end around Thanksgiving. And then it's gonna start up again next year, next calendar year. So when I look at that page, it's hard for me to understand how much is gonna happen in the first half of the fiscal year between now and December 31st, and how much is gonna happen in the next calendar year. So I think the engineering year is really opposite to the financial year. You know, a whole bunch of construction can happen in the summer, but next year's a new year. So I guess I have a little bit of trouble with that picture. Now, my favorite project is the Piedmont pipeline. And I see it on there, $2 million coming from fire surcharge, no debt financing. Looks great to me. I have to tell you, my observation in the last 2 years, I remember going to a meeting when Carly said, this is not going to get done in 2024. So less than 2 years ago, there was hope that the Piedmont pipeline would be done in 2024. And there was a moment when she said, no, it can't happen. And then about a year ago, at some point, I remember a committee meeting where Garrett said, it's not going to happen in 2025. So I've seen this one project slip 2 years, in 2 years. And so if you go borrow, I'm just using one project, but I mean, if you go borrow a big load of money and then projects are slipping year by year, you wind up holding this hot potato for much longer than you intended. When I look at that page, I'm kind of skeptical that the Peavine pipeline is going to get done by June 30th. I mean, does anybody really believe the Peavine pipeline is going to get done by next June 30th? You're going to be out there in spring, and by June 30th, the whole thing will be done, and the $2 million will be paid. I'm skeptical. Maybe it'll be done in the summer. I mean, I'll be delighted if it's done by next Thanksgiving, a year and a half from now. I'll be delighted. But still, you know, since you're making plans and everything, right, you've got this chart, I really have to express skepticism. I have to express skepticism about any of those projects getting done by June 30th. But I would like to see the division between what's happening before December 31st and what's happening in the next calendar year. That would be helpful. So a year ago, the board went through the budget process, and about 45 days into the new fiscal year, in the middle of August, all of a sudden there was a tax penalty, unbudgeted expense. The interim finance director asked the board for approval to pay this unbudgeted expense. So at this point, the 5th anniversary of the 2021 loan is on March 1st. I believe there will be a tax penalty because the conditions are the same. The money was not spent in 3 years. And that loan, I think, was at 2.4%. So we were making a profit. We were making this arbitrage profit. I think there's a penalty in store. And it will need to be paid within 60 days after March 1st, which is less than 12 months from now. So as far as I'm concerned, that tax penalty is a current liability right now, and we ought to know what it is. Last year, it cost $13,000 for the bond counsel and $42,000 for the tax penalty, for a total of $55,000. This year, I don't know what it is, but I expect there will be a tax penalty. I think the bond counsel is the guy that knows he can do the calculation. The money's been spent. I think seems to me that unless there's something I don't understand, the calculation could be done now to know exactly what that tax penalty is going to be on March 1st. So rather than do what was done last year, I think it would be good to find out what that current liability is. It's due in less than 12 months.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce. Anybody online wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, we will move on then to the next, I believe is the consent agenda. Anybody want to comment on that? Okay. With no objections, I will consider that to be approved as is by unanimous consent. District reports. Does anybody on the board have questions on those? Yes.
I just have a comment.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have a whole lot here, and I appreciate you putting the report together. But I do want to point out that under the background cash balance total, we have restricted and unrestricted funds. The unrestricted, though, really isn't unrestricted.
May I clarify that a little bit?
So either that or I'm looking at a different number. So this is part of the confusion that I know I get, which means the community's going to get confused.
You've got legally restricted, and then you've got the board reserves. This is with, on that page, what it's designating is restricted cash, where it's legally restricted for a certain purpose, and then the unrestricted cash.
Okay.
Which is very different from your reserve policy.
Okay, I get all that. I understand that. But then if we're going to do that, we have to have additional context around explaining what that unrestricted means. Because this gets into the vocabulary. Unrestricted means, hey, we can spend it on anything. Now, again, we can spend it on anything, but we've chosen to dedicate a fair portion of that in a restricted fashion. And without the additional, and I'm talking about tables, not lots of text that people have to try to get through. Without that additional context, it's sending a mixed message into our community. I'm very concerned about that. So
I put some words at the bottom of that page.
that
can help.
Sorry,
again, I'm trying to better understand.
Again, from my point of view, it's more around tables, not text, because the text gets lost. If we have this, legal cash or accounting based cash balance total here, immediately underneath it would be, and as a note, right underneath it, 8 million or whatever the number is of the 11.5 million above is restricted by the board for capital reserves to be used in disaster recovery or whatever. Something along those lines would help, I think, clarify and not somewhere down later.
So moving the words around on the table.
Or create a separate table that says this is what the unrestricted cash is really now designated for.
I'm gonna ask some clarifying questions.
Sure.
And when I look at cash, it's cash. And cash is either legally restricted or not. Then there is working capital. And that's what applies to the reserve policy. Reserves don't usually just look at cash. They look at your working capital, which is your current assets minus current liabilities. And that's where you do a reserve calculation.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
No, that's bad.
That's government best practice.
But from a disaster recovery point of view, a net asset calculation does nothing for me.
No, a working
Or,
capital.
excuse me,
So
working
current
capital.
assets less current liabilities. So that actually reduces the availability. So actually it's more conservative than cash.
This might need a longer conversation
Yeah.
about how to structure this in a way that communicate, because we just got done talking about the reserve policy above. And if I try to reconcile this against that, I'm not sure I can make that connection easily. Right. In terms,
Two different things.
I understand that, but part of what we have to do here as a board and a staff is help, particularly in a public agency, is help our community understand the connection to the best of our ability. And I'm not sure we're there yet, but perhaps this is a more one-on-one conversation, if that's okay with Jen, who just went into the bathroom.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yes.
I'll coordinate with Jen to make sure it's okay.
Okay.
We had a very productive education in all of this at the finance committee. And it took a while, but I think I got it.
Well, I'm just not as smart.
Well, no, you haven't had the.
No, I mean, I've been in budget and finance committee before,
Right,
but
not the recent.
None of it has ever really connected relative to, I could take somebody from the public and go, this is what it is.
We have we have a solution here that the two of you could have a conversation.
Will.
Okay. So, anything else on the district reports? I don't see any other hands up. Written communication.
Can I briefly comment on that?
Sure.
I just want to say that I think we need to, as a district as a whole, be kind of working more with like the supervisor of the fifth and the county to be talking about, more about these consolidations and bringing people in and trying to do like package grants, between Big Basin and the two that we have and this one. It seems like a lot of people need our help. And when we get this new general manager to be moving these into a broader conversations about larger consolidations. So that's
Okay.
all.
Okay. All right.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also think that we need to establish some guidelines, if not ultimately policy around how to do consolidations. That is what we need in terms of information. And certainly working on Brackenbray has really highlighted for me how
Informal.
ad hoc and informal.
Ad hoc is the committee.
Informal was the process.
We've been going about.
And it's not, and it's not good for the district. And more importantly, it's not good for the people that want to be consolidated because they don't really know what they need to deliver.
I echo what Bob says about having some kind of either guidelines, policy, structure.
I'm about half done.
Okay, as to having something that the district then has in place that we could pass to somebody like the River Grove or the next one that comes down the line, because they're out there. They're going to be coming to us.
Because they're going to become the regulation that's coming down, which, as you guys know, I'm not a big fan of a lot of. But the regulation that's coming down is going to drive people to us because they can't deal with it.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
And that's what's driving River Grove.
And that's certainly the case. Now, the thing I might differ a little bit is I don't want to be actively saying to someone, you have to consolidate, or gee, this is an option for you. I'd like to say, we have a process. And if you choose to go through that, we're certainly willing to engage with you under these conditions. Because I do think if people want to run their own water district, and they've been doing it for decades in some cases, they should be able to do that if they wish. That is, we shouldn't go out and try to force them into consolidation.
I've not seen the district actively soliciting anybody for these kind of things.
That's good.
They're coming to us because we, at least in their minds, have some manner of stability, and
such as it is.
We give the illusion of that, however it may be. So,
Mark, you do great marketing.
Doing a great job.
No, I get it. But I mean, I think, all kidding aside, I do think having the board consider putting together some guidelines for people on how to do this, as Alina was talking about, even potentially expanding that to how to get funding. So I have to say, I think funding is going to be challenging as well.
Well, I think if you tie it into a larger package, maybe it's easier because you're doing like a countywide
Big
plan.
Basin,
But
River Grove.
well, yeah, you got Brackenbray,
Big Basin,
Forest
River Grove.
Springs, and just consolidating the watershed as a whole.
Yes.
But I have to tell you, the numbers that you're looking at for doing some of these are staggering.
And Bob and I have been looking at Brackenbray, Forest Springs since the beginning of the year together as the ad hoc committee. It's my intention to come back to the board with a status update of where we are on those. But I'm not ready to do that. Right. I'm not ready to do that yet. But my hope is June timeframe. But that's right now a hope because I've been this way with GM over the last month.
But it's absolutely spot on what you're talking about. We need to do a better job of being able to respond to these things and helping people get to where they want to be. Right.
And be transparent. I contacted Kathy Brothers. Brothers is the president of River Grove Mutual. We had a good hour-long conversation about it. We're interested, if she's interested in having further discussion. We agreed. She's going back and checking with her board based on input that I was providing. But for now, that's all I want to be able to share with the rest of the board until
I'm
we.
glad someone got back to me.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
we
All
done.
right.
Outta here before
With
9.
that then,
I think we still have to allow public comment. I don't know if we did it
Oh.
for,
Yeah, no, we do.
okay.
If anybody wants to
Okay.
comment.
I was in the
then
restroom
we
for
also
the
have-
12, the items. 12.
we assigned you all of the responsibilities that came up out of any
Oh,
of these
okay.
during that
Got
period.
it.
You left the room.
Thank you.
So, with that to the point, any public comment on these, what the, district reports or this other thing? Don't see anybody here in the room, don't see anybody online. With that,
Say that $6 million in the Wells Fargo check.
I understand, I was taking notes, Bruce, but
Then we
yeah.
do, I keep forgetting that we do have board comment too,
Oh,
if you
yes.
want it.
You guys keep skipping over
oh. Does anybody from the board want to comment about something else that we haven't?
Since it has come up a few times at the finance committee, we encourage staff to act on investing the uninvested funds to start earning interest. So
Yeah.
hopefully that will be underway.
Okay,
that. And Heather and I are working on it.
Awesome.
Point of order, though, just to be clear about what the intent is of board comment, because the note says about future agenda items. So will the investment that Bruce was suggesting, does that have to come back to us, or does staff have the ability to do that on their own?
It says reserved for general comment or.
And or, yeah, it's for general comment and or requesting for future agenda items. Yes.
Well, general comments, I have a little bit of a concern with around Brown Act issues. Because if the comment is something that is under the purview of the board, then that needs to be agendized, not just sort of generally thrown out there. Discussing future agenda items, I think that's probably okay, or at least suggesting. So I think this might be something that perhaps the admin committee or somebody can follow up with in general counsel. I think going into a general comment thing is a dangerous place to go relative to the
General
Brown.
counsel is the one that actually suggested that I put that on there.
Yeah, most boards have it.
in the
Can we ask
past,
Barbara?
right, in the past for agenda items, if a board member wanted to add something, it was submit the written request.
Yeah.
To have that added, and that's what I've done in the past at the time to general manager to have it done that way. But since we had the question to, well, what does Barbara say?
Yeah, it is allowed under the Brown Act, and we can provide that info to you, Bob.
Yeah, if there's a code number that you can send me, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
When Kunkel was GM, he said all the other boards he's worked with have always had it as well.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, can we, does anybody object if we adjourn now?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Good night.
everyone.
My